Hi, Miss Armstrong. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about my role for the 2015-2016 school
Mm-hmm.
year. And I had a couple of talk points that I wanted to kind of run by you and get some feedback from you, maybe about some thoughts that you would have.
Okay.
Well, for next year, the vision for our literacy program is to follow our gradual release coaching model.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it this year, I do need some feedback on maybe how coaching can look different. I just in reflection, coaching probably wasn't as successful as I would have liked for it to be this year.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if I can go back and maybe read catching readers when they fall, and I can go back and revisit the gradual release coaching model, maybe I can have a different system for coaching teachers and maybe even have a different approach for coaching teachers. So basically, the vision for literacy for next year is to develop coaching, have a different perspective, and be successful in a different way. Do you have any thoughts? I know with the administrators, they were having conversations that even maybe there would be more coaching from the administrative perspective. I had
Mm-hmm.
heard some talk about that. So, what are some things maybe that you could maybe give tips about going into next year?
Well, I think one of the things that we discussed, especially kind of going into this school year after our staff development that we attended, I think it was July, with the in-class teacher support role. I think that was a good foundational piece for us as the leadership team, but really looking at how can we use that as a basis and a premise to help guide the staff's thinking. I think we are currently in a position where we kind of need to go back to, I want to say almost the basics, but kind of go back to really understanding why we are doing some of the things that we're doing, so that educational component for our teachers, I think, is going to be so critical.
I am Crystal Adindu, candidate for principal certification through Lamar University. I am here to discuss my reflections using the Gibbs reflective model. The video that you will be viewing will be of my principal and I, and there were several action items that I front-loaded her with that I wanted to discuss. My feelings about our meeting is that I would have hoped that there would have been more explicit answers rather than general answers from some of the items that we discussed. For example, we talked about developing lead teachers, and we've talked about this throughout the year. And there's a lead teacher model that I had discussed with my principal earlier, just something so that we can framework what exactly we're looking for and to be able to look at the domains and competencies so that we could, again, frame the type of lead teacher that we'd like to develop. But at the same time, we need a model to make sure that we're looking at specific criteria and characteristics. And when I presented this lead model or lead teacher model to my principal, I guess I was expecting her to kind of look over the model. And I know she's busy, but to look over the model and at least have some thoughts, because this is something that's very crucial for our campus and something that we haven't done before. And we have a lot of teachers that have some really unique talents that we're not utilizing and not helping them to develop. Also, with our instructional leadership team, we discussed developing maybe those lead teachers or even other teachers. My principal brought up the point of differentiation presentations. We've noticed that a lot of our teachers are, I guess they're feeling like they're receiving the same format of presentations from the support team. Of course, we get the information from the district and we bring it back to our campus, but we are thinking that it would be more meaningful if the support team brought the information back to the campus and then had lead teachers or other teachers who were really specialized in specific areas like literacy to present the information to the rest of the staff. It was a good experience for me to meet with my administrator about some of the items. The only thing that I have just a little issue with, I feel like our conversations really don't move beyond a lower level scaffolding. Most of the time, even when we're talking about various items, we really don't ever move to a solution based. And I know that's something that's been a concern this year as well as previous years. And even though a lot of times we do attempt to come with some solutions, of course, my principal has time restraints on that she has to consider. She has to have district procedures that she has to consider. But the thing about it is we do need to at least have some different problem-solving solutions to at least begin to brainstorm with, rather than just discussing these issues over and over and over and not really moving past a point. The thing that I can make out of this situation is that I know that I will need to bring more solution-based thoughts to our conversations. And I will, again, think back to many of the things that we've discussed and learned in class. Remember policy, procedures, and law whenever I'm thinking about solution-based items to discuss. And I think even I will refer to some of those things that, actually my principal went through the same program, so she's familiar with the format of Lamar and some of the things that I've had to work on, some of the philosophies and the pedagogies. So I believe in our next conversation I will refer back to some things that we've talked about in class at Lamar, and that may even refresh her memory of thinking about moving towards more problem-based solutions if she goes back and thinks of the things that she studied when she was in administrator and principal certification. We also talked about book studies. Our instructional leadership team definitely needs a type of book study so we can begin to develop our own philosophy as a team, and that's something we've never done. And this will be the 4th year of the administration, and our instructional leadership team has not developed maybe our own philosophy of how we want to work with teachers, the overall vision of the campus that needs to be established, and the mission of the campus and how we need to carry that forth. I've been pleased to work on some of the activities in class because it did, especially on my practicum log, make me to think about our mission statement and how do we implement the mission statement. And for the last 4 years, I can honestly say that we really haven't addressed our mission statement. We really haven't taken apart our mission statement and really think through how are we reflecting, what activities are we doing, what philosophies are we carrying out, how are we working with parents to show that we're developing or implementing our mission statement. So that's a very important thing that we need to think about next year. And one thing that I'll think about also going into administration. We discussed also incorporating new staff members, and that's something that we haven't done a successful job in for the last few years. New staff members, even though my district is a really arduous district to begin working in, and there's a lot of high demands, a lot of high expectations, but we do need to look at our new staff or new teacher process as we're bringing people into our campus, helping to integrate them into the district. What are some supports that we're putting in place other than instruction? What supports are we putting into place to support these teachers when they have concerns, when they have ahas, or when just identifying their own strengths. The areas that I asked my principal that I can work on, I did bring up that I know going into the next school year, I would like to have a different vision, a different focus, a different plan for support for myself. And she did mention working on some technology-based issues and moving our staff to more technology, softwares, and Google Drive, and just some of the different storage systems that we can use versus using our system that we have now that is going out of date and it won't exist next year, and we'll really have a problem if we don't move the staff to using Google, of which our district is using. My conclusion and my action plan will be on the rest of my 3 of 3 video. Thank you. Hi, Mrs. LeBlanc. I'm happy that we are able to do our final exit interview and just kind of discuss a couple of things that I had been thinking about going into the 2015-2016 as our campus reading specialist. One thing I wanted to just discuss and kind of hear some of your thoughts about was a vision for literacy. I know this year one of the main visions will be our coaching piece. And we've been using the gradual release model from the book Catching Readers When They Fall. But I know administrators are getting also some additional information on their coaching, and I was wondering, what are some of your thoughts as far as support, not just literacy, but support personnel and coaching teachers, and how you might want that to look for this school year coming up?
One of the things I thought about too is our vision for differentiation. Want to make sure that we're hitting the children and finding out exactly what their needs are as far as literacy, what level is each student on, and gathering some data to make sure that we have some kids that are succeeding and then some that are starting to fall through the cracks. So we've got to figure out what we can do to make a difference with our children. And part of that is coaching, and then part of that is also differentiation, making sure that we're meeting the kids at their needs.
Okay. And also, I'm thinking even as far as the role of our coaching with teachers. I know this year there were some areas, I know we did the I do, you do, we do, but the follow-up with teachers I know that's an area that I definitely need to work on, and probably all of our support people need to work with. But as far as after we do the modeling, we do that conversation afterwards about what they saw, what they noticed, any ahas, and what they plan to do differently going into maybe the next lesson that they teach. I guess we needed to think about, how do we want to do a follow-up past that level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the big things that I've been kind of like wrapping around my brain too, is accountability, and how I can support you guys as a coach, and then also how my assistant principal and we can go back through and do our own walkthroughs, and then our own discussion of what we saw, if we saw improvement after your coaching piece as well, so that we can kind of teamwork with that aspect.
And I'm thinking maybe we probably even need to think of maybe a timeline. For example, if we were seeing a teacher maybe the first week in September, we did the model, we did the first follow-up, then maybe 3 weeks from there we could establish.
So thinking about that whole education piece, I think it's going to be important for us, whatever model we decide to go with, for us not only as campus reading specialists, but I think all of us in this leadership role to take on that same model and have some discussions prior to summer. And then I think it's going to be vital for us to have a plan in place once school starts, to how to allow that to be a teach piece for for our teachers, I think too, it's going to be important for them to understand the value and the importance of the coaching model, and maybe clear up any misconceptions. I think that will go a long way when you then do begin to take an active role. I don't want that to be putting you in a position where it, for lack of understanding and education, teachers are apprehensive to you coming into the classroom and really looking at instructionally what can they improve on, getting feedback from you and using that to change their instruction. So I think that that's really good, and I think one of the things, like I said, that we could do as an instructional leadership team to maybe make this process go a little bit smoother than it did this year is to really look at foundationally what are the key components that we need to teach to our teachers, the value of it, the importance of it, and then for every member, from you to Maddie to Amy, us using that same model. And then two, I know we had talked briefly, at the beginning of last year, what will this model even look like for our special ed department and our ESL department. So I'm glad that you're taking that on, and I think we can kind of spur off of your energies to get that started. So good job. I will be better this year of going in and having specific conversations with teachers and giving you feedback from their perspective, also having some conversations with you, and then also my observations so that we can all see globally how this is working and impacting our students.
Okay, and now just reflecting in some of the points that you made, I think that may have been the piece that's been missing for the last year or two, maybe coming from our department, are the expectations. I mean, we really didn't sit down and talk about what the expectations were for coaching, what it could really look like, and the value, and clearing up any questions that teachers may have had prior to us beginning the coaching cycle. So that those are really good key points that I really had not thought about. So over the summertime, I'm going to really sit and kind of revisit those, and then maybe at our next ILT meeting, I can come back with some information.
Yeah, and that'd be good.
Okay, the next thing that I wanted to discuss was to develop a follow-up system, I guess, after the coaching piece and going through the cycle, the I do, you do, we do. Then I really need to think through the follow-up system, following up with administration, and exactly what should that look like for this year.
And hopefully, once we determine those key components, that will then be able to allow you to be able to take that dipstick. We said this is how we want this to look. We said this is where things that you wanted to see from your coaching and what we wanted to see from the teacher. Did those things happen? Yes or no? And then if not, where is the point of breakdown? And then how do we go about remediating those?
Okay.
Talk to me a little bit about, currently, what would you say are the top 2 adjustments in the follow-up system? Are you talking specifically follow-up with myself and Ms. LeBlanc as administrators, or are you talking about from the follow-up piece from you guys to the teacher?
Well, I guess the whole system period, from support teams to the teachers, and then support teams to administration, and then administration with teachers.
Back to the teachers.
Yeah, and I think the one piece this year, I think I did a little bit better job of it the year before, was the follow-up piece afterwards. After we've modeled, after we've coached, after we've discussed things, really taking an in-depth look at students and the pitfalls in instruction. Like, for example, a small group. There's been some pieces that were missing in some of our small groups with some of our teachers. But I don't know if we did, I don't think we did a really good job of following up with them. First, we do the initial follow-up.
Right.
Okay, these are the things we saw. These are the things that, what did you think about, maybe your particular lesson? We did that piece, but
the
then
ongoing.
The ongoing
I
like
piece.
that. Let me write that down. The ongoing pieces.
And as you were talking, I think one of the things that I think my biggest push this year is for lack of a better word, let's get back to basics. So I've shared with you before, I feel like we have a lot of systems, but in some ways they're kind of functioning in and of themselves, and we don't really have a systematic approach. So as you were talking, you were like going back and following up with teachers. Yeah, I met with you, after this direct coaching piece, but as I leave you with these tools, is it getting you closer to your goal? And as I thought about goal, I thought about SMART goals too. So maybe if we could really look at, like I said, this whole teach piece. Why are we here? How are we best impacting students' growth? And from that, develop goals and understand that you guys' role as a coach is one spiel, or not spiel, what's that word? Spool.
Yeah, spool, continuous type
Yeah.
cycle.
In that whole system of growing not only students, but also growing our teachers. So if I've got some personal goals that I see for myself as the instructional person in that classroom, then how do I take what you've given me and how do I let it impact what I'm doing? And it's continuous, like I said, it's ongoing. And so maybe we need to, I know this year we had some opportunities more so in the fall semester for you guys to work with teachers outside of necessarily grade level planning time. But maybe that's something else that maybe we could look at, is maybe it's not always you guys sitting down and talking about lesson plans, but let's talk about these are your personal goals as a teacher. How is the coaching that I've done in your room helping you move towards those goals? So maybe integrating some possibilities for those type of discussions.
And when you say personal goals, are you referring to, I know you're referring to instruction, but I guess I'm thinking through what are some, because I'm thinking maybe I even need to coach teachers even through establishing what is a personal goal as far as instruction. Because I think a lot of times, we always say personal goals, and we're thinking of, reflecting on our lives. But when you think of a personal goal as far as instruction, I'm wondering, do I need to talk with teachers about that?
I think we do. I think we, any and every place that we can give them information to better move forward, I think is needed. I really do think we're in a place where we need to kind of go back to learning. And I think before I got here, especially before you guys, earned your 2010 distinguished, I think the campus was very much in a place where there was continuous learning, and out of that learning becomes growth. And I think if we don't provide teachers an opportunity to learn, we're not going to see the movement that we need to see. So to answer your question, I think that's totally valid for you to think about how do I increase teacher schema of what is a professional goal for myself concerning instruction.
Okay. That's good. Okay. And also, we've been talking sporadically throughout the year about developing lead teachers. I know the support team wouldn't be the initiators in developing teachers, but however, we do play a component part in moving teachers through the process of being leaders. And I'm wondering, do we need to maybe look for a model of developing lead teachers, or is there something that we already have on the horizon for developing lead teachers? I know it's been a couple of years, but I think I had passed on a document that discussed the different domains. Of course, we have domains for lead teachers, but I'm wondering, do we need to maybe find information, book studies, talk to other campuses, or, as I said, maybe there's maybe very well something that we have here on the horizon that we could do. So what are your thoughts about just starting the whole process with support in developing lead teachers?
I think that would be a tremendous benefit, especially thinking about where we are and where we've come this year. I think having some really strong lead teachers, I think, is crucial, is very crucial. As far as on the horizons, I know Ms. LeBlanc hasn't had any specific conversations with me in regards to that. But I know myself personally, I think some of my responsibility in this role is to really look at how do I push teachers in that direction. We don't ever want anybody to become stagnant. But I think with that, also understanding what strengths, what weaknesses teachers are bringing to the plate. And then in developing them as lead teachers, using their strengths and their weaknesses to assist them to move forward in that. As far as maybe getting in contact with some other campuses, I think is great. I don't even know if everyone, even on our ILT team, really understands what is a lead teacher. So maybe, we talked a lot about the coaching and bringing that to the staff. Maybe this is something, a piece that we need to focus on. When I say we, the ILT, that we maybe need to focus in on this fall semester and really get a good understanding, and then us collaboratively coming together and talking about how does that look here on campus.
Yeah. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with our ILT, being that we have a new team. We do, and even I need to revisit those different tenets for identifying who would be a potential lead teacher. Well, we already know who teachers are on a campus that exhibit certain characteristics, being positive, able to positively coach or mentor others, that are really possibly strong in instruction, that can help others to develop their ideas.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe
Campus and district initiatives. Exactly.
Yes, identifying those individuals first, looking at their characteristics, the ILT having a better understanding on even how to get that, I guess, the process going with lead teachers. And then I also need to think about having ongoing conversations throughout the years with teachers, because as we develop our lead teachers, of course, that's part of coaching also. So I'm thinking about, when would I have those ongoing conversations? They may not necessarily need to be formal, but maybe they can be a 2 or 3 minute sit down to kind of talk about what direction maybe the team might be heading, the cadre may be heading.
Exactly.
And also, I was also thinking about, our infrastructure within the school. We know that, our administration, and then our ILT would be the next layer. And then our grade level chairs, but then our lead teachers would also maybe fall in that hierarchy of ways information can be passed, ways that we can organize things, ways that we can maybe even get professional development. I know I'm going in some other areas, but I've been having a lot of thoughts about this. But probably as we reestablish our hierarchy for this year, I'm going to think about how I can continue to mentor and guide conversations with those teachers, those lead teachers. Okay, and another thing I was thinking about was maybe not a novel idea, but it does help, and you had mentioned developing our ILT capacity. And I know over the summertime, there are certain books that I need to read, maybe new publications. I am Crystal Adindu. This is my part 3 of 3 of my leading video. You will see that I am leading a discussion with my principal, and there were several items that I came prepared to discuss with her and kind of lead her into a more reflective conversation. The part of the Gibbs reflective cycle that I would like to discuss would be the conclusion of our planning, the conclusion of what our reflections for the 2014-2015 school year. Some of the things that were discussed that you viewed in my earlier conclusions about the Gibbs reflective cycle were tenets of a lead teacher. We discussed differentiation. We discussed my role in helping to develop lead teachers. We talked briefly about a book study and what direction we would like to go with our book study for next year in order to increase our knowledge and awareness. We discussed developing our ILT team, and this year we will have a new ILT team, new assistant principal, along with areas that I can work on based off some of the questions that I had for her. One big hurdle is using Google Suite for our campus. We were used to an old system of storage and communicating and sending information and sharing information, but now our district has moved to the Google Suite, and we are having issues and concerns with some teachers switching over. And the problem is our previous storage site will no longer exist this year. Therefore, we will have to think about the processes of simply moving teachers, 45 staff members, to a new system. So those are some things we definitely need to think about over the summertime and have in place before we go into the new school year. In conclusion, I had provided her with some of the items that I wanted to discuss, and I did think that she would have maybe come with maybe some different, or maybe even some solutions to some of the items that I brought up. A lot of these were things that we have previously discussed, just her one-on-one with my practicum log and our instructional leadership team. So many of these items were not new items. I think that maybe she took a reflective approach along my reflective approach of what has been happening this year, and therefore it seems it turned into more like I was leading a talk through conversation with my principal, and I'm sure that helps as well. It helps me, and it also helps her in planning for the school year upcoming. She did tell me that she would like me to work more with technology with teachers and helping to establish some foundations so that we can spring forward on some initiatives early in the school year. There were some things that I did start, and I wish I had maybe had a little bit more time to plan, maybe a different type of administrative backing, so that teachers knew that some of the things as far as technology were non-negotiable. So hopefully we can go into the new school year with a different spirit as far as technology, because I know our campus is slowly falling behind in some areas and other campuses are really moving forward. And if I had to do this conversation again or lead this conversation again, I would probably come with some solutions that were already pre-thought of, pre-planned, pre-prepared to bring to her and let her think through maybe more solution-based type, have a more solution-based discussion. This year, I did want to talk more and think through the process of helping to develop lead teachers. And I know the process starts with administrators, but thinking about ways that our support team could also support those lead teachers, being that we are a part of that process with working with those particular teachers. So I was thinking through the characteristics of the lead teachers that we would need for our campus. Even though there are a lot of different characteristics that could lend to being a lead teacher, each campus would probably need to establish those characteristics that are a better fit for the campus. So what are your thoughts in, I guess, would we need to start with maybe a book study or a model of how we would need to develop lead teachers? Does our ILT team really have enough knowledge or information in helping to develop lead teachers? But what are some of your thoughts with that?
I was in the process of talking with our master math department, and there's a book study that they've been using for their lead teachers to find lead teachers, and I need to get the title of that. I've called her twice. I'm going to call her back. So I want to start with a book study like that, and then also I kind of want to take the lead back on where we have our lead teachers with differentiation, and then see if we can get more teachers that are actually doing some of the differentiation pieces and highlight them as well. because we've already started with some of our lead teachers for differentiation, and the ones that went to the training and stuff took off is just utilizing more of our own staff members for that.
Yes, and I noticed that even the teachers, the staff members in grade level, I think they really enjoyed hearing some of that information and communication from teachers about what was actually working in their classroom and some things that they needed to change. And it does give a different perspective of even when support presents information, because we really don't have that piece to where we're able to try it out with our kids the way a classroom teacher would. So I would also like to work more with lead teachers in the area of literacy. Sometimes when we get information back from the language arts department, maybe our first line would be to talk to maybe lead teachers on a grade level and work with them.
I'm sorry. I think we need to do more vertical alignment as well. So whenever you're talking about that, bringing some teachers that are strong, and the survey that we had done at the end of the year talked about some of the subjects that each teacher thinks they're strongest in. So really highlighting that and looking into the TEKs and the different areas that we're weak on that we can grow on.
Yeah, okay. And I would be interested. I know I kind of have an idea of some teachers that are strong in literacy, but I bet even there's some teachers that I may not even thought about, but are really good in some different areas that would lend more to helping teachers to get things established in their classrooms and, in a different way that support can.
Yeah.
How about, you had mentioned a book study, but I'm wondering, even with our ILT team and then thinking about the staff, I'm wondering, I was thinking more, and we talked about a little of this in our ILT, basing more of our decision making from research. And I know it's easy a lot of times for us as educators to rely on our own experiences in the classroom and things that have worked for us and things that haven't worked. But I'm wondering if we do come from more of a research base whenever we're talking individually with teachers or individually with teams, would that be even a better idea than just communicating our own thoughts?
I'm 100% right there with you. I agree. We, in the past, when we were moving up in success, a lot of what we did was research based. So I think we need to go back to that. And as far as for PLCs and making sure that we're making effective use of the teacher's time, and we're all working together effectively through that as well. One of the things I thought of too is we have a lot of new staff. And so bringing back like Ruby Payne and some of the poverty and how students learn. And so we're going to start the school year with Region 10 poverty simulation.
And a lot of times, even though educators have different thoughts or feelings about certain things, the one thing that any of us can argue with is when something is fact-based and it's research, you really can't argue with that. You can find differences in all of our opinions, but, the facts are the facts. So I'm looking forward to also this poverty simulation with Ruby Payne. Yeah. So I know that you also had to complete some information about my practicum this year, and I have to complete the 235 hours. And you've been coaching and kind of going through my log with me to identify the things that I've been doing, and probably even started before my program. So were there any, key questions or things that stood out for you on that survey that you could think about? Maybe some areas that I need to work on?
One of my questions is basing back to technology, some ways that we can. I know that our school is we use the swap a lot, but the district's trying to push us to Google Docs. So I need your thoughts on how we can move the school to more technology based and making sure that we're using our web and updating our webs and pieces like that as well.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I was talking with another teacher about, we were talking about a lot of different applications, and, we started our Twitter Tuesdays this year.
Mm-hmm.
But after even starting an initiative like that, even though it wasn't a huge one, but it was kind of a field tester of trying to get everyone to move from one continuum to a different continuum as far as technology. And, maybe some staff members weren't quite on board or ready to, or maybe they just didn't feel they had acquired those technology skills.
Maybe some more training.
Yes. And I think going into this year, being that we've kind of talked and massaged everyone through using Google Docs,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that our SWAT drive is going away eventually, maybe even the mindset will be different going into technology. So I'm wondering if maybe even at staff meetings, maybe giving little pieces at a time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe like September, maybe the third week of school, if we showed everybody how to log into Google Docs and to maybe sign up just for an account. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all we do at that staff meeting. And, if people wanted to bring their computers, there's other teachers that are there that are already logged into Google that could help, and maybe that could be just maybe 10 minutes of a staff meeting.
Okay.
It's the initial login, because I'm thinking
Just the exposure.
yeah, and I think from a lot of conversations that some teachers, they have the information, but maybe weren't really for sure of what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
As far as getting their login, that would be a major hurdle just to get connected to the district Google Drive and site. So maybe at a different, maybe a couple of weeks later at the next, another staff meeting, maybe we could show teachers how to access the actual Google Drive. And this would be after we would set up our own school site. I know, schools are setting up their own Google sites.
Right.
So the next thing would be how to access that drive.
Okay.
And then maybe at a next meeting, maybe a staff meeting, or maybe we just need an overall meeting by then, because maybe we've moved people. Maybe that could be just a Google meeting. I hate to say Google meeting,
Mm-hmm.
but we could show them how to use like Google Docs, how to use the storage in Google, maybe how to set up folders, how to upload, and this might be too much at one meeting, but it would get everyone going.
Yeah.
And then, this is further down the line, but Google also has like,
Classrooms.
yeah, classrooms. They have the classrooms. And you know what? Everyone's been received training in using the classrooms. Yeah. So I guess, some of our teachers have already been moved. But also I have set up a Google blogs within Google's for parents to maybe leave feedback, and that may be something further down the line that we can even do their blogging sites.
This is where we can bring in our teacher leaders too to support.
I like
We had
that.
talked about teacher leaders before.
Okay. Yes, and I'm thinking of a couple of teachers who are already pretty much proficient in Google Drive, so that would be great.
And our first grade team used this a lot. It was just getting buy-in for the other grades as well.
Yes. And I know this year we did attempt to use it more with enrichment cluster planning, and I think it worked, to a certain point. And then if we probably just keep pushing after we've moved teachers through these different layers, then at some point, if we set a deadline that everyone, maybe November 1st, would be comfortable in only using the Google Drive, then that would be the timeline.
Give them
maybe
some time to get to
Yes,
it.
give them some
Like
time, definitely. Now, one thing we also need to consider is also they have focus. So that's going to be something new this year. So I guess as an ILT team, or even you and I together are talking with the technology cadre, we can think about how we would need to balance out the two, being that the focus program is new this year, and teachers, is this our grade book record keeping system? In attendance, okay. So this is our whole new system. But at the same time, we do need to balance it out with Google, because our district's on Google Drive now.
And then you are so well versed with PLCs, and you're strong with the research, and you've done such an amazing job with
working with teachers and coaching as well. The other piece I thought about is the awareness of dyslexia that you guys are, and since we're looking at differentiation and some of the needs of our students, and so something with that piece as well.
Okay, and that sounds good. I didn't even think about that because I know our teachers are aware that we have dyslexia, but now that campus reading specialists are teaching specific dyslexia classes, then we had our dyslexia simulation this year. They have a basic foundation, but maybe they need more information on how it's working with their students and then how they can take it to the classroom. Yeah, so that's a good idea too. So I think we have a laundry list of different things that we're going to work on this year, and it's a good idea that we had a chance to sit and talk it out. And I appreciate you supporting me in the program this year, and I've had a lot of eye-opening experiences and also just reflections of some things that I need to work on for myself going into the new year or as a potential administrator.
Great, and I appreciate your hard work all year long as well.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. LeBlanc.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and you've been, you are a principal of Stoltzwood Elementary. I don't know if I had included that with the introduction, but thank you, and we'll do more planning over the summer.
Yep.